I'd like to invite Curt Reimer to come up to speak with us. Curt has been a presence in this church for a long time, someone that I consider anyway. Yeah, I'll let you get there. Yeah, so you're fine. Who's brought, I think, life and light and just a positive impact and presence to the community here, and someone that's reached out and impacted me over time. I remember specifically a while back when I was going out on MX2, he came and bought me lunch and wanted to hear all about it, and that was just a special moment for me. And I think just kind of a good summary of who Curt is. And so I'm very excited to hear him speak and hear what he has to share. And yeah, I'm going to pray for you real quick, and then I'll turn it over to you. Yeah, Lord, we thank you so much for the way that Curt has brought a message to us this morning. And I pray that you would calm any nerves or worries that he has, Lord, and that you would just empower him to speak the words that you have placed on his heart today, and that your Spirit would guide what he says, and that all of us would be attentive and listening, and that our hearts and our ears would be open, and that you would move among us and impact us based on what Curt's sharing. Yeah, bless him richly. Thank you for his service, and yeah, thank you, Lord. Pray this in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Wasn't sure when I heard the announcement that there was going to be more people allowed in church this Sunday, if that was like a good thing or not. I figured you're probably all online anyway, right? But now that I'm here and I see you here, and I don't want to, exclude anybody that's not here, but it just is really encouraging for me to see, and it reminds me actually how much I do miss seeing you guys and being with you and having our Sunday morning time together of worship, and in that is the part of that worship is actually what happens before and after the actual service, meeting in the foyer together, and actually I have prepared this message, and for the most part I think we have this pretty good, this unity and love thing. I feel it here at EFC, and I'm very, very proud to be a part of the community here. And again, I'm very happy that you've all come to join us. And like Andrew said, my name is Curt Reimer, and I'm actually part of the elder team in church here. And if we could just show the picture of my team. I took a couple shots of them. They didn't know what I was doing, but we kind of made it a little smaller so you wouldn't recognize, all the chickens sticking out of their teeth and stuff like that. But and then I had to throw in a little selfie of myself just to show the whole team on that one shot. It's a really cool team to be a part of, and I'm actually very proud of all the members. We have Lavina and Jesse, Kevin and Leroy and myself and the pastors are all part of a one elder team, and it's interesting to see how we are all different. We all have a different thing that we bring to the table. We are not all agreed on everything, and so I read this verse and I'm a little conflicted here that, are we united in mind and thought? But if I could just pull Lavina up, you don't have to come up here if you're here, but I really appreciate her input, and especially I remember that one meeting we had where it was pretty wild, and I think we were pretty much all of us were talking at the same time, and she finally, and maybe it was more towards the end, she really encouraged us to maybe more take turns to speak, because she could not gather anything was said, and turns out I have the same problem. And so it was very good that she had the courage to let us know. She framed it like as if she was too old to get that all, but I think none of us could really get much out of us all talking at the same time. But it is actually cool that we all actually get very excited about it. And so I'm very proud of this team actually, and I'm happy to be a part of that. And we are all together very excited to be a part of EFC and trying to lead this church together in a way that we will grow and continue on for a long time to the future. I thought if I could, when I stand here, I appreciate Andrew's prayer, and I just wanted to thank Jesus again for having you here with me, and for all of you who have tuned in. I thank him for letting me do this job. I'm quite nervous about it. Hopefully the message that is in me will be portrayed in such a way that he guides my voice, and you will be guided in your ears to hear what you need to hear. Ask also that I give this with a pure heart, and that you will take the few pieces of fish and bread that I give here today and use it in any way that you see fit. So the reason I took this topic, it was back in early of this year when Ernie actually asked me to speak, and already I had, at that point, heard someone say something about Jesus is still waiting for his last prayer on earth to be answered. And that connected with me. And that prayer is actually found in John 17. So I'll just read that, a little part of that, where Jesus prayed, I pray for them all to be joined together as one, even as you and I, Father, are joined together as one. I pray for them to become one with us so that the world will recognize that you sent me. I thought I was going to put this story at the end, but it just seems to be the right time. In Mark, in the same chapter that the text came from, is the story of the farmer or the landowner who built a vineyard and put a wine press in, and then he finished it all up and got it set up, and then he leased it out to some tenant farmers. And then when the right time came, I don't know how long it takes to get a crop of grapes, but when the right time came, he started by sending a servant to collect his share of I guess what would call the lease agreement, his share of the grapes. But the tenants now, the farmers, were not actually willing to share any of the crop. And so they beat that servant up. And the owner kept sending in more servants, and they kept beating and killing them. And finally, the owner actually sent his own son. And he thought that they would recognize that the son was from him, and that would add some validity to this request to give him what was due. But the farmers felt that, well, if they would deal with this guy, then they could they would just take over the vineyard. There would be no one left to inherit the vineyard, and it would be theirs. There would be no one to take the estate. And so they killed and murdered him and threw his body out. I don't know, I just brought that story up now. As I was preparing the message, it wasn't actually part of my original thought. But one of the reasons to fight for unity, to battle for unity and to love, is that it builds the kingdom that is the kingdom, that perfect state that Jesus is waiting for, and that brings him glory and honor, and that actually, like the farmers didn't recognize the son, that way with our picture of unity that we display to the world, people will know that Jesus actually was from God, and that he is truly God's son, came to save us. I don't know if that really is a connection there or not, but it just kind of popped into my head there, actually yesterday. Another thing I noticed while gathering my thoughts this year, and especially these last couple of weeks, is that the Bible truly is a book of love and a book of unity. And when I did my searches, there's just many verses in this regard. I didn't even hardly know if I needed to start reading them all or kind of basing my message on one or the other. It just seemed like there was just so many. It actually almost gave me a hard time. I just printed out a bunch, and it just ended up with, I just took a snippet out of the search that I did, and it just went on and on. And actually, the call to worship verse, if I could just read it again quick. I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree with one another in what you say, and that there be no divisions among you, but that you be perfectly united in mind and thought. And so that, just an example of a verse that I just don't actually really know how to take it, and maybe we can discuss it later. You can remember the number to text it into. Do we not ever disagree, or can we not disagree? Or how does that work in light of unity and love? And with there being so many other verses, and I look at them, and some of them seem to give more allowances for us actually not having the same viewpoint on everything. And I wonder if even if you look at some of the gifts that we get, some of the spiritual gifts even, are some people, some of their jobs actually to question things more than others. I feel like we have those people in our elder group that we try to question all our ideas and to proof them. Also, another verse that I think we find in Proverbs, where we talk about iron sharpens iron. So how does that work together if we all agree on each and every point? So I'm going to submit that I think it is in how we choose to be unified, even despite the disagreements. That's what's important, and that might not be a new concept, but I thought I would just reiterate that. And with that, we do remember that there are many contentious issues, even today, and how do we deal with them? That is, I think, how we can show that we are different. Divisions, we don't need to discuss why certain things seem to quickly become hot buttons of contention, and where they could very easily divide us, and we could start lining up on one side or the other. And I think, from what I've been told, that is actually not necessary. That is our own choice to be like that. We can have differences of opinion, and yet we do not need to live divided or start calling it us and them. We can still be one in unity and have these differences and live and walk, step by step through them. Now, obviously, there will be some times when they cause conflict, and I think if we remember what is important, the path that we walk on, if it does not continuously aim towards unity, then we might have to readjust the path that we're walking on, or reevaluate our position even. I think that since this unity and this whole kingdom idea is to bring honor and glory to God, that should be our main focus. Sometimes in business, we feel like we have to maybe detour from that a little bit to get our business done. And that makes me wonder if maybe, like when I do that, perhaps I need to spend more time in meditation, more time in really internalizing what my purpose here is, what my purpose for existing is. I know we can have that other shot now if you have another. There we go. I'm a business owner of concrete pumps, and I actually often still do my own, operate myself. And there's days when I'm out on the field, and my actions do not actually show a lot of love and unity, and do not display anything that is close to what I'm trying to preach to you today. It'd be like a typical example would be, we're pumping along, everybody's happy, things are going good, the gray stuff is flowing, till all of a sudden, bang, it's not, and then we have a plug. And so, okay, you know what, that happens, that's just part of the job. Let's take the pressure off, remove the plug, put the pieces back together, keep going. And then it keeps happening over and over, and I start looking over at the driver. It is a little bit their responsibility to check for some lumps coming down. Like maybe you could see a few of these and throw them out. And finally, when it happens again, I think, well, I better go and check in and talk to him. And I, come around the back of the pump, and man, there's this huge mess all over. I'll have to clean up. And I'm like, okay, we won't even go where I went then. And that was even back when I had short hair. So, it's been a long time ago. And I've been forgiven. I mean, in fact, after I finished, and there could have been actually more than one event, I'll have to confess. But, so yeah, then the rooster crows again and all that. And the Lord, looks at Curt's heart, right in his eyes, and I'm, oh yeah, off the path, right? And he's given it to me, and then he's like, and then I'm sorry, yes, and then I hear another voice, I'm actually over here. I'm over here, Curt. I see the mess that you're making, and I'm still okay with you. Stand up and keep walking, keep moving, keep doing that right next thing, and. I know there have been times when, after the load is done and the driver is unloaded, I have gone back and had to apologize and seek forgiveness. So I'm thankful for the grace that we have in that. I would just like to encourage everybody to recognize the fact that we do have weaknesses and that we do not need to be discouraged or quit. We just get up and keep trying, keep working. So when we talk about unity, what comes to mind? Do we think of love and peace, harmony? Who should we love? In this same story was in Luke, where the religious leader came to talk to Jesus, where they had that discussion. It was an interesting. I read it lots now, and so it's kind of interesting that there was often challenges to Jesus and this and that, and how in Luke it was kind of a flipped conversation. So obviously the authors didn't quite all write it out in the same way. There Jesus asked him what the most important rule was, and he answered. So it was I think a rule that was part of the law, and it is interesting how when the religious leader got it right, and he did know those two rules. This is just to highlight how important those two rules are, and that we need to keep them in the front and center of our mind. That I lost my train of thought there. Those rules are important. Yeah, and in the end, Jesus actually told him that you are actually close to the kingdom. You are actually very, very big, just right next to it. And so I think the kingdom, that is something that we are, in fact, the kingdom is something that I've been thinking about a lot maybe more than just this last year. It's something I wonder about. It seems like it's more of instead, like we often talk more about our personal conversion to the Lord, which is certainly part of getting a part of the kingdom. But I think the message that Jesus talks about a lot more than personal receiving of him is to being a part, to building this kingdom, which is another thing that has been on my mind, and I'm looking forward to learning more, and maybe one of you gets a chance to preach about that next or sometime, and I'd be interested in hearing that. the kingdom that Jesus seeks to rule is unified, and we are on a journey to that perfect state of kingdom. And there is a lot more in I think it's the Sermon on the Mount, where we have the Beatitudes, and how the kingdom is just different. It's upside down. And I think if we keep studying that, I would like to encourage you to keep studying the kingdom. How is the kingdom different than just regular life on earth, the regular default? It is definitely not the default setting that we have. Yeah, so I appreciate the text. It's just so clear how Jesus just speaks it. Those commands are not confusing. If I could just read it one more time in the Passion Translation, it's the most important of all commandments is this: the Lord Yahweh, our God, is one. You are to love the Lord Yahweh, your God, with a passionate heart, from the depths of your soul, with your every thought, and with all your strength. This is the great and supreme commandment. And the second is this: you must love your neighbor in the same way you love yourself. I think sometimes it's maybe easier to follow the second rule, or maybe we need to follow the second rule in order to properly and truthfully demonstrate that we follow the first. What does it really mean to love Jesus? And I know, and I think a lot of us here know that when you study the Word and you get more into the Word, you really do gain an appreciation for Jesus and who he was and what he did and who he is right now, and how he connects with each and every one of us on a daily basis. Even I, as I'm preparing this message, and I don't feel like it's coming together. I still don't really feel like it's coming together, and I see and I have the support of things that people say that really connect with what I think that Jesus is trying to tell me, and also just some little connections that, where if I've been thinking about a certain verse or something, and then it comes around to me from a completely different angle, and I'm thinking, I think that's just got to be a little sign that I really don't have to be all that super worried. Jesus is with me, and I can do this. I can walk on the water. Like, I'm going all over the place here now, but part of the psych up verse I had here is from Matthew 14:27. It says, "Be brave and don't be afraid. I am here." There's a lot of challenges when we're out there, and we're trying to be loving and kind, and sometimes we just feel like we need to maybe express ourselves differently to get our own values and our own goals across, and then to back down and to rather decide to live unified. Sometimes it's scary, and we have to remember that we can walk on that water. That is for us as well, not just for Peter. Once you get out there, though, the waves do feel big, so just remember that that's how it's going to feel when you get out there. So that story in Luke, the Samaritan was trying to maybe, you're supposed to love your neighbor. So, but in Mark it doesn't have this part in here, but in the story of Luke, there's a story of the Good Samaritan. It tells you who your neighbor is, or it gives you a clue that your neighbor could be anybody. We also have a verse that says that you should do whatever you can to get along with everybody. I think that's in, I find my notes here, that would probably be in Romans. Does anybody else have it? 12:18. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. I think I'm getting pretty much having everything that I needed to bring. I also thought something that hinder us from being united sometimes is just a really anxious mind, and so I just thought I would toss in some of my favorite verses from Philippians. Philippians 4 talks about rejoicing and being thankful, renewing our minds, verses 8. If I could find it here now, I'd like to. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable, right and pure, and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice what you've learned and received from me. Everything you heard from me and saw me doing, then the God of peace will be with you. I think that has helped me in a lot of ways over the years, is to, when I do remember this verse, is to really focus on being thankful and to keep my mind renewed and focused on the path. And that often involves keeping a perspective of who others are and looking for reasons to be thankful for what they bring, regardless of how contentious individual you are having to deal with at the moment. If you think of an individual as contentious and hard to deal with and unfriendly, and then you will probably have a hard time finding anything about that person that is thankful. But if you can renew your mind and work on looking for those things, you will probably end up, very likely, it has happened many times to people, that they will end up actually becoming friends and enjoying the company of this individual. So what is our role in changing the outcome of that story of the vineyard? I think our role is to continue working towards the kingdom and unity, to remember all the passages. You don't have to memorize them all, but remember that the Bible is full of passages instructing and encouraging us to be one with each other, to live in harmony, to do whatever is possible. That is our job to changing that story. Jesus did not stay dead. He came back and thoroughly destroyed and dismantled death. I like that song that Mo chose. It's part of my message here. So choose today in thankfulness to love and honor one another. This will bring honor to the one who sacrificed everything to give you life. I think at this point I'll ask Mo and Andrew to come up and see if we have any thoughts, any further truths that we can discuss.
Yeah,
Come on up, Andrew. Come on up.
I'll come up.
Better light for you.
Perfect. You know I need it. One of the first ones we have here says, we as Christians have to have a unified goal, and that is bringing glory to Jesus, which includes making disciples, worshiping him, etc. We also have to remember that there are different ways to get there. So yes, we may disagree from time to time, but we as Christians can never disagree or compromise on our core purpose as believers.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've. I think it's something we've talked about before, is the idea that we need to have the things that are important, that are non-negotiables, need to be there, but we also need to then give grace in the things that are just on the outskirts of the non-negotiables, the things that we can give comfort in.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that is possibly a no-brainer, but it can at times be difficult to remember during those times. I think it's how we disagree often that is important, but I do really enjoy and feel like let's say a team is more productive if there are different viewpoints. So
This one is fascinating. Does God use our disagreements for kingdom purposes? Example, Paul and Barnabas. Sometimes as churches, we're too narrow in our vision, and so God allows us to separate so that more and new things can be accomplished. How do we follow God's lead before it becomes necessary to be separated? right?
Maybe you should read that again.
No, I will. Does God use our disagreements for kingdom purposes? For example, Paul and Barnabas. Sometimes as churches we're too narrow in our vision, and so God allows us to separate so that more and new things can be accomplished. How do we follow God's lead before it becomes necessary to be separated?
Okay, so there's kind of two things there, right? Mm-hmm. Because the first one is, can God use our differences to accomplish bigger things? Yes, I would totally agree with that, and I think that there's a lot of times where our church and a sister church can accomplish two different things and reach two different groups of people. I think that is there. Now, does it always need to start from disagreement? No, I don't think so. So that's kind of the first part, but the second part is, how do we stop that? How do we stop the division from happening so that we can still do it all together? And that I'm not sure of, because I think there's times where we need to encourage the division in order for that to happen better. And I think there's other times where we look and say, can we do this all together?
I think there's something too about like Paul and Barnabas. Lord was absolutely able to use a disagreement and a separation for the greater good of the church, but that doesn't necessarily mean that was a great thing, that they had a big fight and wouldn't talk to each other for a while. Like, I think that's the Lord bringing good out of a bad situation, not saying that's a great thing that happened.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. He can definitely use just about anything, and that is the comfort that I took in coming up here to begin with. But the spreading of churches, I mean, even now sometimes with a lot of the things I've been hearing due to the pandemic from other church leaders, let's say on podcasts, there is a thought that we will be going to smaller groups as churches in the future and still be one. So it's an interesting thought. Also, some of the notes that I've discarded, I've asked questions like, does it show a picture of disunity for, let's say, Steinbeck to have so many different churches? Does that, right. You sometimes hear about, I've heard that from non-Christians, like what is the meaning of that? Like, doesn't seem, there's anyway no consensus. They feel that it's all divided, and so I wonder, how do we battle that, or is it a good thing? So I don't know if we want to all be in one group all the time. So.
Yeah, and smaller groups I don't think inherently means less unity.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Curt mentioned that being a person who questions can be a calling. Can you unpack that a bit? How to use that calling in a way that causes unity and not division?
Well, I didn't mean for it to be really talked about. I just threw that out there.
And if we don't have people who are asking questions when we're going through and making decisions, there are a lot of perspectives that we miss. And so some people have been given a stronger gift, let's say, to ask questions. Sometimes, for those who have not been given that gift, that can sometimes come across frustrating. If we're honest, but at the same time, it's vitally important, because we need to make sure that we are thinking through the steps and the things that need to happen so that we can do things in the best possible way. Now, if we get stuck just questioning, and it becomes that circle, that never-ending circle of questioning, I think then we need to step back and say, okay, wait a minute. Are we questioning for the sake of questioning, or are we trying to find a way to move forward?
Yeah. It's that it's not necessarily even a spiritual gift. I think some people just naturally, some people are okay with more conflict than others, and I think the spiritual gift part about it would maybe be if you can do that really graciously. I'm not sure. Yeah. I know I'm probably not one of those, but I'm still contentious at times. Maybe I am.
And I'd also throw in that if you don't ask clarifying questions, you might not be as unified as you think you are.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
Good
Like
point.
that, rather have the question discussed than to think that you haven't,
Yeah.
than to not discuss anything and then just kind of walk into and then find out really that you don't agree.
Totally.
But that's what we have coffee for.
Right.
After meetings, we have coffee.
Smooths over.
That's
Above all, coffee covers a I'm sorry. No, love, it's love.
It seems that individual rights often derail unity. How can we affirm the individual but also build on the collective focus of Christ?
I could do that snapping thing. Wow. They're just
have to-
banger questions today. Like
Yeah,
just
really good. Go ahead.
I sent you a note.
Yeah, I was going to end with that one. Do you want that now?
Well, I think it kind of talks about that, but I send notes every once in a while too, and I said, unity is a series of successes and failures overwhelmed by love. Unity does not mean that we're always getting together and making, like that we all agree on everything. But I really think that if our starting approach to other people is love, not me,
Yeah.
unity happens. Period. If my approach is first me, and I want to try and accomplish unity, it doesn't. And the other thing is, it only happens, I believe it only happens in the power of the Holy Spirit. But start with the choice to love the other person, to see the other person, to listen to the other person, to walk a mile with the other person, and unity will happen. Curt, you said it before. Often when you approach it with the right perspective and the right understanding of who the other person is, you often end up becoming friends instead of seeing someone as an adversary.
I've read about that, yep.
And I think there's also probably something there of like that we're being called to a standard that's higher than maybe what we're capable of. But A, it's only through the Spirit's power. And B, I think like we in the West just live in a more individualized society, right? Like as opposed to Paul's original audience here and where Christ like where he dwelt and who he like was among. It was a very community-focused, community-centric way of living. So we're like, oh, that's impossible what he's calling to. Well, A, yes, that's why it's only in the Spirit's power. But B, I think we probably start from a bit further back than who the original people. So we have that much more to make up for. And it's probably not as much of like a metaphor or suggestion as we sometimes think. Like this is like a real call here to unity. And
Yeah, boy, those were some really good questions coming out of the thoughts that Curt had for us. And so a big thanks to everyone who submitted a question and for Curt for kind of giving us that starting point to start that discussion. And it was good.
It is a big topic. It is something I got into and I'm thinking, oh, maybe it would have been a little bit something easier to go on than this unity thing. But yeah. On the other hand, there is so much information or so many verses on it that if I could read it one more time, I thought I would do it from here. Different translation, as you'll soon see. All I'm going to read is this second command here. Oké, hoor ik me. De tweede is dit. Du sollst die nächste so gelten als die selbst. Du hast kein geratere gebaut als deze. I just thought that would be a cool mother tongue ending. For those of who have that as a mother tongue, you might not even know it anymore.
Thanks, Curt.